Princess Mary restaurant vessel on dry land became a very popular place through the 1950s and 1960s. The whole place is very haunted. Not unusual, really, because ships can be very haunted places.
A waitress that used to work here, she was heading up to the storage room, which used to be the wheelhouse when this was a boat. And she was getting some stuff for the kitchen, and she looked up to the rafters and she saw a woman hanging there. And the woman opened her eyes and looked at her, and it totally freaked her out. So she looked away, and then when she looked back, the woman was gone. So she brushed it off, thinking her eyes were playing tricks on her. The exact same woman that she saw hanging there walked past her in the hallway. I believe it's haunted. There's several people that have died on the ship, and I don't think they're ready to go anywhere soon. I believe this is their home.
There seems to be something about one of the components of the old ship itself, perhaps the Venezuelan oil tanker. It's said that the wife of a former captain had committed suicide by hanging herself in the old wheelhouse.
Today, we boast that we have a resident ghost that comes around and does different things around the Princess Mary. Some of the examples are rattling dishes, footsteps when there's nobody there, and many different little things that go on, and we just take it for granted that there's a female ghost around and she's friendly, and we live with her on a day-to-day basis.
The Princess Mary is a favorite ship in Victoria. It was a coastal steamer built in Scotland. It arrived in Victoria just before World War I. A very well-known sight until the early 1950s, when the ship needed lots of repairs. It was being scrapped at Capital Iron in downtown Victoria, and directly across the harbor, Harold Elworthy operated Island Tug and Barge. Elworthy needed a place for his staff in the growing business to have coffee on their lunch breaks, and he saw the saloon as being a pretty good place. And as time went on, their business expanded and they needed to add more. And so part of a wooden ferry was brought in and added to the old ship. And then a Venezuelan oil tanker became part of it as well.
A couple of the other things that have happened on the Princess Mary when it was in service was there was two sailors that had hung themselves also in two cabins, and two people had drowned that we have know of, and we have them documented.
Mr. Lang and I were working upstairs. It used to be the wheelhouse.
It was approximately 10:30 at night, and we were taking inventory, and we had locked up the rest of the ship, and there was nobody else in the building.
All of a sudden, I heard footsteps coming up the stairs. We both turned to each other and said, "Did you hear that?" And we both got up, walked outside, out the room, no one in sight. But I still, to this day, remember those footsteps.
Well, the Princess Mary restaurant story is an interesting one. Of course, you got all the elements here. Ships have often been associated with hauntings and ghost stories. And then the legend, of course, of the woman who hung herself. All these elements provide a good setting for ghost stories. Now, ghost stories often come about because people perceive things late at night, and they like to think that perhaps ghosts only come out after dark. But what happens is that after dark, we become much more anxious. We depend very much on visual stimulation for our sense of security in the world. And in the dark, we can't obviously have the same sense of security we have when the lights are on. So even in semi-darkness, we're much more likely to be a little bit anxious, a little bit more prone to anxiety, and certainly more prone to misinterpret stimuli, whether it's the creaking of pipes or whatever, as being something sinister, something that justifies the anxiety we're feeling. In the context of a place that's supposedly haunted, our brains quickly jump to, that's the ghost.
Adjacent to the new second-floor banquet room is an old area, part of the old Venezuelan oil tanker. It's used now for storage, and only staff have access to it. One of the servers for a club luncheon one day was walking through that storage room.
And as I walked up to the upper level, there was a man in the back, and I was in a hurry, so I didn't pay too much attention. And then I stopped him and said, "There was a man there. What is he doing out there?" Because it's a service area, nobody goes there. So I turned back and I said, "Excuse me, can I help you?" And he was gone. I went back afterwards, double-checked. No one was in the room, and it's a mystery.
The kitchen seems to be a very haunted place as well. In fact, that's where most of the hauntings take place in the Princess Mary. At first, it was just small things. The staff began to notice the kitchen utensils suddenly going missing. They appear at the end of the day exactly as they were once located, but on the opposite side of the room. No one had done it, and if that happened just once or twice, it might be written off as a strange quirk, but it happens all the time. The lady who washes dishes, who's been there for a number of years, says that sometimes when she steps away just for a moment with the dishes piled up, she comes back and discovers that they're all done. And it happens very often.
Myself and another chap, Henry, were working in the kitchen. We had noticed that our dishwasher had left, so there was nobody else in the kitchen. It was just Henry and I. We seen an escargot dish fly off 10 to 12 feet against the convection oven on the other side. So even if it fell off the shelf, it would never get that momentum. So we both stood there in awe in the middle of this big rush, and we could not believe our eyes. We were heading out home, and we walked down into the large banquet room that we have at the Princess Mary. And I looked across to see a white streak run down through the original part of the ship, and then it disappeared. So needless to say, we were very upset and very scary at that event.
The most unusual experience, I would say, was on an afternoon, more busy than usual. I was serving quite a few tables, and I had a tray full of coffee on my plate. And as I was walking through the restaurant, one of the cups literally jumped up like there was a spring underneath it and spun through the air. It landed straight on the ground, right side up, without spilling a drop. There was nothing on me, nothing on my tray. The carpet was dry. It was unbelievable.
Have passengers from days gone by returned to the old ship just for one last ride? Or is it the wife of the captain of the Venezuelan oil tanker, now an addition to the old restaurant vessel? There's so many things that make the ship haunted. And even the new parts seem to attract ghosts. I think the Princess Mary will be haunted for a very long time.